Have you ever wondered how a simple trade dispute can escalate into a deadlock that impacts global economics? Let's take a step back and delve into the genesis of the World Trade Organization deadlock, a complex tangle of trade disputes between the European Union and India. Unraveling this thread, we find ourselves faced with India's levies on information communication technology, or ICT, products. These levies, aimed at protecting and nurturing India's burgeoning ICT sector, started to chafe against EU exports. The impact was significant, given the EU's stronghold in the ICT sector and its extensive trade ties with India. This friction did not go unnoticed, and soon the WTO panel was examining the situation. The panel's findings were far from favorable for India. They declared India's tariff norms inconsistent with global standards. This verdict meant that India's protective measures were seen as a violation of the trade rules set by the WTO, a body meant to ensure fair and equitable trade. The WTO's ruling was not taken lightly by India. The country, striving to become a key exporter in the ICT sector, appealed against the panel's rulings. This appeal marked the beginning of a standoff between India and the WTO, with the EU caught in the middle. But here's where the plot thickens. With India's appeal pending, the WTO's appellate body, which is crucial for progressing such disputes, found itself non-functional. This unexpected twist left the dispute hanging in mid-air with no clear resolution in sight. As the appellate body remained non-functional, the dispute found itself in a state of limbo. The stage was thus set for a stalemate that had the potential to send ripples through global trade dynamics. This is where our story begins. The stalemate, my friends, had just begun. Conflict resolution often requires a middle ground. But what if one party is hesitant? In the ongoing tussle between the EU and India over trade duties, the EU has proposed arbitration as a possible solution. A neutral third party would assess the situation, consider the arguments from both sides, and then make a binding decision. This method aims to cut through the deadlock and deliver a resolution that is fair and just. But here's where things get interesting. India, despite the looming pressure of a dispute that affects its tech exports, is hesitant towards this proposal. Instead, it prefers a permanent standing body, an entity that would not just address this specific issue, but also provide a structured platform for resolving any future disputes. Why the hesitation, you might ask? Well, it revolves around the question of permanence and structure. India's preference for a permanent standing body stems from its desire for a long-term sustainable solution to trade disputes rather than a one-off arbitration. It's about setting a precedent, creating a framework that can be referred to time and again, and not just putting a band-aid on a single issue. And while this approach seems logical, it does come with its set of implications. Firstly, establishing such a body could be a lengthy and complex process, potentially prolonging the current dispute. Secondly, there's the question of whether other nations would agree to such a body, considering the diverse interests and perspectives involved in global trade. Yet India's hesitation and its preference for a permanent standing body could also be seen as a strategic move. By pushing for a long-term solution, India is perhaps trying to ensure that its interests are protected in the long run, not just in this specific dispute, but in any future trade disagreements as well. So where does this leave us? Well, in a state of status quo for now. The EU and India, two significant players on the global trade stage, remain locked in a dispute with no immediate resolution in sight. The stalemate continues, with both parties holding their ground. In the midst of a trade dispute, could negotiations for a free trade agreement be a silver lining? Picture this: two economic powerhouses, the European Union and India, embroiled in a trade dispute. Yet they are also exploring possibilities for a free trade agreement. Now that's what we call a plot twist, isn't it? Let's delve into what such negotiations might mean for India's trade regime. With an FTA in place, India could potentially see a significant boost in its industrial production output, but it's not just about numbers. It's about shifting the global dynamics. It's about transforming India into a key exporter in the information communication technology sector. Imagine the ripple effects. The country's domestic ICT industry could flourish, creating jobs, fostering innovation, and strengthening the economy. The global ICT landscape could reshape, with India emerging as a major player. And for the EU, well, It could gain a reliable and cost-effective source for ICT products, reinforcing its own digital economy. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The road to an FTA is not a straight one. It's fraught with negotiations, disagreements, and compromises. The concerns over duty concessions, sustainability standards, they're all part of the package. They're challenges that need to be addressed, obstacles that need to be overcome. The FTA talks, however, are not without their challenges. Every silver lining has a cloud. What are the roadblocks in these FTA talks? Let's delve into the crux of the matter. As promising as these free trade agreement negotiations between the European Union and India may seem, there are hurdles to overcome. Foremost among these is the contention over duty concessions. India's tariff norms, particularly on information communication technology products, have been a bone of contention, causing a ripple effect on EU exports. The question remains, will India be willing to make concessions on these levies to foster a harmonious trade relationship? Another potential stumbling block is sustainability standards. As the world grapples with the urgent need for environmental protection, India's commitment to sustainable practices comes under the microscope. Will India meet the EU's stringent sustainability standards? This is a question that could heavily influence the outcome of these negotiations. But here's the silver lining. Interim measures could be put in place to ease tensions and promote progress. One such measure could be the removal of duties on ICT products, a move that could potentially unlock new opportunities for both parties and pave the way for a more collaborative trade landscape. Yet, these are complex issues, and finding a resolution will undoubtedly require time, patience, and a commitment to dialogue and compromise from both sides. As the road to resolution remains uncertain, the world watches and waits. As we navigate the complexities of global trade, let's recap the key points. This EU-India trade dispute started with India's ICT product levies impacting EU exports. The WTO panel found these inconsistent with global standards, leading to a stalemate. The EU proposed arbitration, but India, preferring a permanent body, hesitated. Amid this, FTA negotiations between the EU and India hold potential to revolutionize India's trade regime. However, duty concessions and sustainability standards pose significant challenges. The EU-India trade dispute is a testament to the intricate dynamics of global trade. As the deadlock persists, the world economy hangs in balance.